To Rodney. Glad to have you.
All right. Amen. Just let you know, Jay told me to take all the time I needed. See, most of you said, okay, like, yeah, okay. But there were some of you. All right. It is good to be here. It is squeezing this. I mean, it was just worked out, because last week you didn't know I was going to be here. I didn't either. One of the guys there said, "Hey, Rodney, are you willing to preach on Sunday someplace?" And I said, "Sure. I can do that. I can squeeze it in. Because I drove, unlike everybody else that took a plane. I drove from Abilene, and so my schedule is just driving back. Actually, I do have something tonight in Abilene. I'm not doing it. We're having like a citywide prayer meeting. Lou Engel's going to be there, and so it's going to be a kind of a big thing because we're gathering in the high school stadium. And, I told them don't pray against rain. I said pray for clear skies. Pray for something, not against something, because it's been raining there, as it's been raining here, which has been good because we've been needing it. Tomorrow, my wife and I, we leave for Budapest for a few days. It's at Budapest, Northern Ireland, and England. Got a conference with Global in England, doing a deliverance training, which we probably do here sometime. Budapest is an interesting country. There's like 4 years ago, the prime minister's son gave his heart to Jesus, and got together with two other guys, and he was a law student, and they just started praying and fasted and prayed, and felt like God wanted to start something, just a meeting, and they called it the Upper Room, and they, 3 years ago they started, maybe 3 years ago they started this thing, and well, when I was there last February, they had over 1,000 young adults meeting every Thursday night. Another 3,000 to 4,000 that are meeting, out in the countryside. They've actually started like a movement, a Jesus movement. But they're these young adults that have no really spiritual mothers and fathers. So part of the role that that we have is fathering this movement, fathering these leaders. We're not leading them. We're not following the movement, but we're fathering the ones who are leading the movement. And of course, when you're just right out of college, some of these right out of college are still in college, that particular age group, you just need some spiritual moms and dads. So they've asked me to come like twice a year, connect with them. We're doing that. We pay our own way because, young adults have no money, you understand. But a couple of people that I'll be connecting with, a lady that got miraculously healed, at Voice of the Apostles, might have been the one down there with Joanne Moody. I'll be connecting with, and Blaine Cook, who was with John Wimber in the Vineyard Movement, and really great friends with Randy Clark. So we'll be there for a few days doing that. Go to Northern Ireland, and the guys who's hosting me there are bikers. That's going to be fun. And so anyway, we'll be doing that for 2 weeks, and appreciate your prayers for that. My wife usually doesn't go with me because traveling is not her favorite thing to do, but she hadn't seen Northern Ireland, so she said, "Okay, I'll go." You know how that goes. Oh, wow. I'm just going to read a few passages of scripture here to kind of make a point here that I'm going to be making. In Mark chapter 9, this is verse 33. You can just listen. It says, "They came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he began to question them, 'What were you discussing on the way?' But they kept silent. For on the way they had discussed with one another which one of them was the greatest. And sitting down, he called the 12 and said to them, If anyone wants to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all. Okay? Now, this discussion was not a one-time discussion. It just continued on. Luke chapter 9, verse 46 says, and an argument. See, it moved from a discussion to an argument. An argument arose among them as to which one of them might be the greatest. But Jesus, knowing what they were thinking in their heart, took a child, stood him by his side, and said, whoever receives this child in my name receives me. Whoever receives me receives him who sent me. And he who is least among you, this is the one who is great. Now you think, of course, Jesus, he's addressed this thing a couple of times. You think this should be it, right? So now they're going up to Jerusalem. Okay, and of course, this is the last week, the very last week there. They're going, making their ways up to Jerusalem. Matthew chapter 20, verse 17. And as Jesus was about to go up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside by themselves, and on the way he said to them, behold, we're going up to Jerusalem. The Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death. And they will deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify him. And on the third day, he'll be raised up. So he's having this discussion going up and pretty serious stuff, He's trying to tell them what's going to happen, but what's on their mind? Well, I can tell you what's on a couple of the guys' minds. The next verse, then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, bowing down and making a request of him. He said to her, well, what do you wish? She said, well, command. She's telling Jesus to command. Command that in your kingdom that these two sons of mine may sit one on your right and one on your left. Jesus answered and said, you don't know what you're asking for. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink? And of course they said, yes, of course, we're able. And he said to them, well, my cup you will drink, but to sit on my right and left, that's not mine to determine. And hearing this, the other 10 became indignant with the other 2 brothers. That means they were really mad. Jesus called them to himself and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and that their men exercise authority over them. It's not so among you. So whoever wishes to be great among you shall be your servant. Whoever wishes to be first shall be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life for a ransom for many. So now you think, okay, now Jesus, he's addressed this thing a few times, and very directly he's addressed this. And, what was kind of arguing, behind the scenes now has kind of come out to the front, and you'd think, okay, Jesus addressed it. It should be settled. It should be a settled issue. Don't worry about it, because he's telling him, really how the attitude they should have. So now they're at the Last Supper, the very last supper there, and Jesus drops a bombshell. Behold, the hand of the one betraying me is with me and on the table. For indeed the Son of Man is going as it has been determined, but woe to that man by whom he is betrayed. And then they begin to discuss among themselves which one of them might do this thing. So now they're having this discussion on who do you think is the one who is going to betray Jesus. And how do you think they were making that decision, deciding who was the one who was going to betray? The very next verse. And there arose a dispute among them as to which one of them was regarded to be the greatest. I mean, Jesus just said, the guy's going to betray me is right here. He's right here, eating at the table, and they're going, oh, who do you think that is? I don't know. It can't be me. Can't be me because I'm amazing. I mean, all the stuff that I've done, it couldn't be me. It's got to be him. He only saw 2 blind eyes see. I've seen 5 or 6. It's got to be him over there like that because, he didn't hardly see any miracles done. I don't know how they were deciding who was the greatest or who wasn't the greatest. But I want you to notice this. Jesus never rebuked them for wanting to be great. All he did was show them how to come into it. He never got on them. He never rebuked them for the pursuit of greatness or wanting to be great. He never knocked them for wanting to be great. All he did was begin to reveal to them how they can come into greatness. That it's not about promoting yourself, but it's about serving others. It's about coming like a child. Because you see, there is a greatness that is inside of you that God is trying to get out. You see, greatness is never to be a comparison, and this is where they missed it. They were never to be comparing themselves with other people. Greatness is never a comparison. Greatness is simply a description. And you need to understand God is calling you into greatness. Now, I know sometimes we kind of rebel and say, well, I know we're supposed to be humble people. But let me tell you something about humility. Humility is never about belittling yourself. It's never about demeaning yourself, degrading yourself. Oh, I'm just such a worm, I'm just no good. It's not me, it's all Jesus. But you got to understand that that's not humility. If my son were to come up to me, when they were young, they're grown now. My youngest is 30. If they were to come up to me when they were young and they say, Daddy, I think one day I'd like to be president. I'm not going to respond like, kids. There are 320 million people in this country. The odds of you being president, it's not going to happen. You don't say that to them. You say, yeah, go for it. In your mind, you're thinking, it'll never happen. But still, you encourage them, right? I mean, if another one came up and says, when they were young, Daddy, I just want to be an astronaut. You don't say, kid, I think you set the bar too high. You're just not that smart. You don't say that to them. You say, yeah, go for it. Basically, you're trying to encourage them to, to think big and to dream big and to go after big things. There is greatness inside of you. And what I really want you to see this here is that didn't happen when they first started walking with Jesus. It's like the more they walk with Jesus, all of a sudden that which is inside of them begin to come up. The more they began to experience the kingdom of God, the rule of God, all that was inside of them with their true identity began to rise up. You see, the devil's trying to give you a false identity so that he can give you a false destiny. But God wants you to have his identity. He wants you to see who you are, the way that he made you, the way that he designed you. And the more you get around the things of the kingdom and the people of the kingdom, don't be surprised. All of a sudden it just comes up and you go, wow, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm amazing. Now you think, well, that's prideful. That's not. It's only pride whenever you're flaunting it. You're basically, portraying yourself. You're comparing yourself. You're trying to get the favor of man. You're trying to tell of all the exploits or the things you know. You're dropping names. You're doing stuff in order for people to be drawn to you, in order that you look good in front of people. That's not the issue. But the thing is, God has put greatness inside of you for you to do great things, and you're going to have that mindset. And what the enemy tries to do, he tries to get you to think that you're no good and stuff like that. That's not humility. That's like false humility. He's waiting for that true identity just to come out. And what Jesus did, he the environment that he created pulled that greatness out of these guys. And he gave them instructions of how to come into greatness. Serving others, not lording it over. Jesus only had 3 years to pull out the greatness and really to release these raw, uneducated, as they were called in Acts, untrained, unprofessional, in many respects, to pull all of that out of them so that in 3 years they will change the world. These guys were on the fast track. And so what he did, he actually created an environment to pull the greatness out of them and to put them on the road to walk in that. And what you're going to see here is that what he primarily did is that he gave responsibility to untrustworthy people. He did not wait until they were competent to give them a job. He didn't wait until he felt like, I think you can handle this, in order to hand the responsibility to them. He actually gave responsibility to them before they were qualified. He actually gave them responsibility before they showed that they could be responsible. We have to realize that people happen to be the objective. I pastored for 32 years on the West Coast. And I was always frustrating a lot of my leadership. Because I'm looking at I try to pull people into positions based on what I hear God saying, not necessarily because they're the most qualified. And somebody, because, sometimes people think we'd have a pecking order. Like, I've been serving in this ministry for 10 years. I deserve to be leading it. Yeah, but God hadn't called you to do that. But you don't think that because I've been in that ministry for 10 years. I should be leading it. But what did God say on this? And what I would do, I would pull in some people periodically to say, I think this person needs to be doing this, based because I heard God on this. And they're going, no. We got other people in order. We got a pecking order here. They're like they're way on the bottom here. I go, well, no, but I think God wants them to be up here. Well, I don't think so. And I frustrated them because I would pull them in there. And then what would happen is they would fail, and they go, see, I told you. I go, yeah, but, how else are they going to learn? I put people in positions based on what I heard, not based because they were qualified. And it frustrated other people who weren't thinking that way. And most of the time, I would say to those people, okay, you go talk with God and get a word from God. And none of them were hearing God that clearly enough that they were there to say, okay, you're wrong. Because when I heard clearly, I heard really clearly. But the problem is that these, not everybody's ready. And what happened, the discussion would be, well, I don't think they're ready. Well, of course they're not ready. How do you think they're going to ever get ready? You're never putting them in a position to be tested so they can actually be ready. And a lot of times, in churches and even organizations, it's like we're waiting for somebody to be ready, to raise somebody to be qualified, somebody to be experienced enough, to go through enough trainings. Finally we said, okay, then we'll basically put them in a position, because they're ready now, and because the argument in my house, I'm just telling you the argument that was in the church that I pastored. We're like, I don't think they're ready. And I said, I would agree. They are not ready, but that's not the issue. The issue is, what is the Lord saying? You see, the environment that they had was an environment of taking risks. I mean, we're so glad that Barnabas took a risk. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a lot of the scripture that we have, because he took a risk with Paul. Paul, who was Saul, the persecutor of the church. When he shows up, everybody says, oh, well, I'm not having anything to do with this guy. But Barnabas said, hey, I'll take him. I mean, no, if they operated like, well, oftentimes we operated, we wouldn't even have half of the New Testament. We wouldn't have the book of Mark, because when Paul dropped Mark, Barnabas took him back up. We wouldn't have Paul stuff. I mean, we wouldn't have a lot of stuff in the New Testament if it weren't for Barnabas, who took a risk with somebody that nobody else would take a risk with. You see, we don't grow until we're put into positions that we are tested and we have to grow, where we're forced into it. I mean, our greatest teacher is failure. You will learn more from failure than you will ever learn from success. And then oftentimes we want to create an environment that minimizes failure. I don't think they're ready. What you're saying is that I don't want them to fail. We have to be willing for people to fail. You have to, the church environment should be an environment of risk, where people say, okay, I'm going to jump out there, take a risk, and if I fail, I want to know, are you going to condemn me, beat me up, knock me down, take something away from me because I failed, or are you going to say, okay, just help me get back up? I mean, that's the environment that the church has to be. It's in this environment of risk with people to say, okay, we think you need to do this, and we need to encourage you to take a risk. Well, I don't think I can do it. Well, it doesn't matter what you think. You just need to get out there and try. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm not qualified. I don't have the gifts. Well, you don't know if you have those or not until you get out there and you try. And so you get out there and they fail, and you go, see, I told you. And you go, no, that's a failure. Like, how many times you got to fail before you succeed? I mean, if you look at all the great people in the world who's done stuff, people like President Lincoln, all these guys like that who went through failure. Finally, they succeeded, and they became great people because they learned more from their failures than they ever learned from their successes. And we have to be okay with failing and having an environment where people fail. But if you're going to have that environment, that culture, you can't be beating people up. You're just going to pick them back up and just get back into the game. You can't be just pulling them because they missed the tackle. You're going to have to say, get back in there, and I don't want you to miss another one. I mean, that's the way you do it. Jesus took big risks with people. I mean, how many of you would have ever put Judas in charge of the money? And you think, why did he do that? Was he setting Judas up to fail? Let me tell you what I believe. I believe he was setting Judas up to succeed on the fast track. But he threw him right in the midst of his place of weakness to give him an opportunity either to succeed greatly or to fail royally. All the disciples were thrown on the fast track. The environment that he created gave Judas the opportunity to overcome his weakness, but he failed. And Jesus was okay with having a portion of his inner circle fail if he could get out of that 11 people who would change the world. And because we don't have a culture of risk, we don't want people to fail. So we're going to create an environment where the Judases won't fail. but you also create an environment where you won't get a Peter and a John. If you want a Peter and a John, you have to take a risk that you're going to have a Judas. And you will have Judases. You will have some who will fail, and it breaks your heart. But you also get the Peters. You also get the Johns. You also get the guys who changed the world. God will only relate to you as he sees you, not how you see yourself. And not how other people see you. You know, here it is in the book of, was it Judges 6? You know, Gideon, remember the story of Gideon? How the angel of the Lord comes up to him. He says, you know, where was Gideon? Remember that story? He's like, you know, in the wine press, hiding from the Midianites, threshing wheat. Because he didn't want them to come see. I mean, the guy was not displaying anything bold. Everything that was coming out of him that it looked like was that he was a coward. And then the angel of the Lord comes up to him and says, "The Lord is with you, O mighty valiant warrior." And he's like, who's he talking to? Is he talking to me? You talking to me? You know, like nobody else is in here, you know. And then, you know, what Gideon does is that he begins to, he begins to give excuses why he's not this almighty valiant warrior and why God doesn't seem to be with him, you know, and the angel of the Lord ignores everything he says. He says, but you don't understand. I don't know why are you saying that? You know, like, don't you know, like, you know, my tribe is like the least of the tribes. You know, my family's the least of the families, and in my family, I'm the least in my family. You know, you don't understand who you're talking to here. You know, I mean, there's a lot of great people in our, you know, in this land here, but me, you know, I'm not the one. And, you know, and if you just kind of observe, he didn't say this, but if you kind of observe, I'm like hiding in the press. But the angel of the Lord only related to him as God sees him. He didn't say, oh, yeah, you know, you are looking kind of like cowardly. I mean, he never said that. He always related to him as he saw him. You see, you have an identity in heaven that you have not seen, but God sees it, and he's only going to relate to you as he sees you, not how you see you or how other people see you. We read the book of Hebrews chapter 11. It in like Romans 4, it talks about Abraham. You know, it talks about this unwavering faith these people had. You know, and we can probably pull out, you know, Abraham and Sarah to be examples of this. You know, how there is like they never wavered in their faith. You know, that's how heaven saw them. But, you know, you read the story, it looked like, you know, when Abraham's passing his wife off as his sister so he didn't get killed. He's doing things that doesn't look like he has a whole lot of faith. You know, Sarah, she's laughing because, like, you know, I'm going to have a kid at this age. I mean, it doesn't look like they had this unwavering faith, but heaven always saw them according to their destiny, according to their identity. Heaven has eyes that sees you in a way that you do not see yourself. Because you may see yourselves according to what you consider your shortcomings or your failures or your weaknesses. Heaven doesn't see you like that. And heaven is going to relate to you according to how heaven sees you, not how you see you. Because heaven's trying to pull out that identity out of you. And the way that's going to happen, he's going to throw you into situations that's going to pull it out of you. And your job is simply to say yes, 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 and take a risk. You know, one of my motivating fears, and it's a healthy one, is that I don't want to get to heaven one day, and then God takes me by a warehouse of all the blessings I could have been experiencing in eternity. And he goes, oh, yeah, this could have been yours, but hey, you didn't say yes. And so we gave it to somebody else down the street or something like that. I mean, because they said yes. I'm like, when I get to heaven, I want to make sure that I have done everything that God wanted me to do on this earth. So what I oftentimes found myself doing was saying yes to things that I asked myself, why did I say yes to that? I mean, I was happy, living here in the Bible Belt, and God called me to go up to Washington, called me to the East Coast, to the West Coast, and we go up to Washington State 8.5 years. And then we go down to the San Francisco Bay Area for 23.5 years. And what God does, he just threw us out into the fire over and over and over again. Some people ask me, well, Rodney, how do you get to what you're doing today? And I said, well, all I did, I just said yes. I said yes. I met Randy Clark. I mean, he's one of he's my apostolic leader in my life. But I met Randy just in a small meeting. He came to California, did a meeting in the church. We had a bunch of pastors, so I met him, but he didn't know me. And the Lord speaks to me, and I really fell in love with him. I fell in love with his humility and, what he's walking in. I mean, I said, this is a guy I can follow. And during the year, I said, the Lord speaks to me, and he says, I want you to go on a mission trip with Randy this year. And I said, okay. I'm looking at the list of where he's going, and people can go, and I see, and the Lord speaks to me and says, I want you to go to Mozambique. I said, okay. I know nothing about Mozambique. I don't know if you're familiar with Roland and Heidi Baker, who were there. I didn't know anything about Roland and Heidi Baker. All I saw was Mozambique. So the next year, what happened? My assistant would call. She goes, "We want to sign up for the Mozambique trip," and he says, "I'm sorry, but we're not, really taking any names for that right now. But we'll put your name on the waiting list." We waited and heard nothing. She calls back and says, We'd like to get on the, are we on the list? Well, yeah, you're on the list, but he's only taking senior pastors. Well, this is for a senior pastor. Okay, well, you're still on the list. Call back later. We're sorry, but the trip is full. And actually, they're only taking 12 people, 12 pastors. First time that Randy Clark was taking really pastors into Mozambique. It's full, but he's on the waiting list, which I found out later was like there's two waiting lists. There's the waiting list of people they know and the waiting list of people they don't know. So the waiting list that they don't know is waiting list B, and I was on waiting list B, and so they weren't, even if my name, even if they had room, they were not calling me. Okay, well I found this out actually months later. So Randy comes back into town, but I don't have lunch with Randy. I actually meet his assistant and made an appointment to have lunch with his assistant. So I took his lunch to assistant. His name was Rex Berger, and I got to know him, loved him. We had like some of the same journey, and I asked him about this trip to Mozambique. He says, "Well, it's completely full." And to be honest with you, there's like 200 people on the waiting list, on the A waiting list. And the good news is I got moved from the B waiting list to the A waiting list, but, there's 200 people in front of me. He said, "You're not going to go." He said, "However, we'll be going next year, and I'll try to get you on that one." I said, "Okay, that'll be fine." But I thought I heard you clearly that I was supposed to go on this trip. Well, I took our young people. We had a mission trip. We go to Mexico. We come back, I'm sick, really sick. And the Lord speaks to me, and he says, "If you fast and pray, I'll open up the door to go to Mozambique." So I said, "Well, okay, I can fast because I'm sick." But my head hurts really bad. I don't know if I can pray. Okay, that was about it, just a simple prayer. And then about 2 weeks before they're leaving, and by the way, I already made plans since I wasn't going to be going. I had a wedding during that time, and I had a camp that I was teaching at. So, I already made plans because I wasn't going to go, right? And, but the Lord speaks to me 2 weeks before they're leaving. He says, email Rex and tell him that you can go. So I emailed him. In the title, I put, I can pack quickly. I sent that email on a Monday, but it did not arrive into his inbox until Friday. I mean, Thursday night, one of the guys who's going on the trip calls him up and says, I hate to do this to you, but my intercessors tell me I'm not supposed to go. I want to go, but I always honor what they say, and I don't understand why, but I'm going to have to back out. Well, Rex was upset. He wasn't going to fill the position. He's only like 2 weeks left, 2 weeks before we're leaving, and then you got to go to, get your visa from Washington, D.C., the embassy there, and so it was just a short period of time, and so he wasn't going to fill it until he gets up the next morning and looks and sees my email. Calls his wife, what do you think? She goes, I think God wants that guy to go. Calls me up on the phone. He says, are your shots current? And I go, I just need to get one. He says, okay, you're going. So I'm on the trip now. I was on the B list, got moved to the A list, and got moved up 200 people because when God said, do this, I obeyed. I said, yes. Okay, so now I'm on this trip. I don't know nothing about Roland and Heidi Baker. No, nothing. I'm just showing up. And I'm thinking, there's all these pastors, so I'm probably not going to have to preach or do anything. I just want to sit back and observe and just kind of be on the ministry team, because I'm finding out these guys who are on this trip pastor large church, huge churches. They're people of impact, like Charles Stock and Tom Jones was on that trip. All these were like people who operated at this level, and I didn't see myself up here. I saw myself operating like this. That's kind of how I saw myself, and so I'm on this trip. I just want to be, I just want to carry everybody's bags. That's what I wanted on this trip. So we get on this trip, and now I'm finding out about Roland and Heidi Baker. And you're meeting people who raised people from the dead. And you go, oh, now you talk about intimidated. Now I'm really intimidated. First thing we do, we get there, and they're having this conference going on, and they say, we need somebody to preach tonight. I'm going, I'm not preaching. No. And everybody else was like, I'm not preaching, except there was only one guy who was willing to preach because he'd never been on a mission trip. He just wasn't smart. I'm telling you what. And it was one of these things where you had two translators, translated into Portuguese and then translated into the local language, Shangan. And so this was his first time to even preach with a translator, and then he had two, and I'm telling you, it was a disaster. It was really bad. And we're all sitting back going, well, I'm glad I didn't do that. Me either. What? Because I'm really getting really intimidated. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I'm going to do this thing or not, So then we fly up to the middle of the country, and so now we go to a place in Morambala, and now we're going to do this crusade. There's 4,000, 5,000 people in this village. So they're doing some leadership training, and then this outreach into the village. And the very first night, Heidi is supposed to be preaching the message. She goes, I don't know, I got this thing in my throat, and I'm not able to really preach. So we're going to need one of you guys to preach. So, is anybody volunteering? No, we're all intimidated by now. Even the guys who pastor the lost churches, when you're hanging around people who raise the dead and stuff like that, you're like, oh, man, not me. And so everybody's going, I'm not doing it. Huh? Not me. Now, understand, I grew up Southern Baptist, and the church I was pastoring was a Southern Baptist church. Boys stayed Southern Baptist. We all did the stuff, cast out demons, heal the sick, spoke in tongues. And we all did all that, but we just found favor, which you might not find that favor in Texas as much, but in California, they don't care because it's all pagan, okay? So especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, most of them, they're not going to care what you do out there. As long as you're winning people to Jesus and staying sexually, pure, you're good, pretty much. So anyway, I was a Baptist, so they're going, my friend who was down the road, the church I'd gone to, he was on this trip, and he goes, Rodney's a Baptist. The Baptists do these outreaches. I think Rodney can do this thing. Yeah, Rodney can do it. And I go, wait. So they threw me under the bus. Now, the good news is I had been doing mission trips and been out preaching the gospel in Nepal and in India. So I had some experience with that. So I'm going, oh, Lord, you're going to have to help me with that. So I get her, and I preach this message. We have, I don't know how many people get saved, probably 1,000 to 1,500 people give their hearts to Jesus. Then the next thing is Heidi says, call up the blind. So I call up the blind, and guess what line the blind people get into? They come up to me, like, why don't you go to these other people, let them pray for you? Because I never saw a blind person get their sight. The first guy was blind in one eye. I prayed my best prayers, and he left. He was still blind in one eye, and then this is not working, and and the next guy comes up. He's like, this guy was born blind. White eye. The pupils all white. Like, no. I'm praying for him. Nothing's happening. And finally, I get her to say, Heidi, I need help. She comes over and she goes, just pray. God's going to show up and do something. Well, that's not help. Like you see the blind eyes open up. You should be the one come down here praying for this stuff. You're the one who said it, So I prayed I just set this guy aside, and I'm praying for him as I'm praying for other people. And in about 30, 40 minutes, this guy was seeing. He got his sight. Now I'm feeling pretty good. Now I know why those disciples were starting to feel like, hey, am I something or what? I was ready. I was more than ready to go back home and share that testimony with everybody. Look what I did. It was this hand here, Of course, it was like Heidi's anointing, I know that, I just got to step into what she does and her anointing, and which is kind of fun to do. So anyway, we get up in another place up there, and of course, everybody's starting to feel pretty good. In fact, the next night we had some of the guys were volunteering to preach the next night or two, and then we go to this other conference that we're having in another part of the country, and of course I'm like a low man on the totem pole. So all of the guys we're having a conference. They all got the good spots of speaking in the conference, and they gave me and another guy Saturday afternoon. If you know anything, afternoons are the worst times because everybody's sleepy. They've all had this kind of lunch, and there's thousands of these guys out there going to be sitting in the sun, and, there's some mango trees that are kind of providing some shade, and I'm looking at this stuff with these guys, and I'm, they got the good part, and then what happened when it came my time and this other guy's time to preach, all of the people, Heidi and all those guys, they all leave. They all go, we're going to go take a nap, so they all leave, and they go back where we're staying, and they're over there taking a nap, having fellowship and talking with each other, while me and this guy are over here doing this conference here. Okay, right in the hot sun. So we're doing this conference, and he preaches, and it was a good message. And I preached this message on the glory of the Lord, and I'm telling you, the glory just came. When it finished, they were on their faces, screaming, hollering. They're all getting blasted. The glory, we had a group of like 300 people from the village who were standing on the hill there. They all got blasted, gave their hearts to Jesus. We're talking, it was amazing. And I'm sitting back going, there was nobody here in my group to see this. Okay. But you see, God's starting to pull some of that stuff out of me that was in me. Anyway, we had a lunch. We kind of finished everything up. This kind of the last dinner we had on this nice big restaurant, on the beach there. And, of course, the guys who really had the guys who were invited, because this was an invitation only, that Randy invited them. I was the only one that he did not invite, in this group. And so now they're sitting in the prominent places. Of course, they can't speak with these guys because they speak Portuguese. That's the only thing, But, I'm stuck in this little corner back here, about the only seat. But the guys in the corner were from Malawi, which speaks English. So now I'm just with the only guys that speak English. Only guys from Africa who speak English, and they were saying, this afternoon, or yesterday afternoon, was like amazing. Well, it was amazing. We got a conference coming up in October with the bakers coming to Malawi. We want you to come. I said, well, I just can't invite myself to something like that. Talk to the bakers. If they want me to come, they'll invite me. They come to me, bakers come to me and says, hey, listen, these guys want you to come. We'd like for you to come. Heidi's supposed to be in Toronto, have the Catch the Fire conference. Roland's going to be by himself. He really could use somebody like you to be there with him. I said, okay. So I bought my plane tickets. I was going to meet Roland in Malawi, have a conference. The only problem is Roland got sick. He couldn't go. He had the staph infection. So we had to postpone the trip. And we postponed it to December. But the thing in December, now Heidi can come on this trip. And it's just Roland, Heidi Baker, me. I brought a guy with me just to buy support, And Supresa, who's one of their guys who raises the dead, And we're all going to go to this place in Malawi, and we're the only speakers to do this conference. And now I am intimidated. I get on the plane. I'm going, why did I say I would do this? What was I thinking? I must have been stupid. So okay, well, it's not that bad. I probably only, it's supposed to be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday conference, maybe Sunday morning. I might speak 1 or 2 times. I'll pull out some of my best sermons, I hope it'll be good. So I get there, and it's like a Tuesday night. And so Supresa meets me at the airport. He's driving me. He says, hey, you're going to preach tonight. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe we got a small church we're going to go preach in, We do. We kind of did that before when we were there, just kind of, on the way to some place, step into a small church, share, talk to them a little bit. And I go, okay, that sounds really good. I can do that. I said, I just need to get my Bible. He says, well, you won't need it. So what do you mean I won't need it? He says, well, the problem is we don't have any electricity. He says, we brought the wrong connections. And so Roland is bringing the right connections, and he'll be there on Thursday. So we don't have any electricity. So we don't have, you can't see anything. I says, well, I got a flashlight. I got a little pen light, I'll just bring my pen light. He says, okay, but you won't need it. So we get there, and it's at the conference. And there's like 2,000 people there, and it's in the dark, and it's raining. And we got sort of these plastic tarps around like this. And the sound system was a megaphone that you hold with one hand and the microphone you hold with the other. This was the sound system. So I preach. I don't have a Bible to look at. I don't have any notes to look at. I preach for about 45 minutes to an hour. We finished that, and then all of a sudden, we get back, and Supresa says, that was a good first night at the conference. I go, what do you mean first night at the conference? He said, well, we decided to start the conference early since you were here. In fact, we ended up having 2 conferences that week because I came early. So he said, I want you to preach tomorrow. I said, okay, how many sessions do you have? We have a morning session, an afternoon session, and an evening session. Okay, which one of those do you want me to take? He says, all of them, if you're able. Well, at least I had light for a lot of it, same sound system. So I didn't have a podium. Morning, afternoon, and evening. I'm about dead. If it's not in you, it's not, it's not coming out, So I'm a guy who loves having my notes. I just love my notes. And so, and I didn't have any. So it's coming out. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm done. The baker's going to be here tomorrow. I'm done for the whole week. I didn't really realize the other conference was there. I found that out because Heidi told me later. So I'm like, I'm done. I've preached, like 4 times already. I'm good. I'm sure I don't have to do any more. So Supresa says, hey, tomorrow morning, I'll take it. I'll do tomorrow morning. Say, okay, good. And the bakers be here in the afternoon. I'm sure one of them will take it. And they're bringing another guy with them named Mark, who's like a missionary from some other place. He can do the afternoon session. They got Heidi. She'll be speaking tomorrow night. I won't have to do any more. I'm good. I'm feeling kind of relieved, And so Heidi, they get there about noon, and they're going to have an afternoon session. And so Sapresa did the morning session. He goes up to the guy and says, who came with him, says, hey, listen, I want you to do the afternoon session. And the guy says, I'm not ready. He said, okay. So he comes back to me. He says, you're preaching this afternoon. I'm like, I didn't even bring anything, because I thought I was done. So I preached that afternoon. And then what happened is that other guy finished out the conference as we loaded up stuff and went and drove to another place where it's just going to be myself and Heidi and Supresa preaching at this other place. Just 3 of us there for a whole new conference. And I said, Heidi, I thought we only had 1 conference. Yeah, but when we found out when you were coming, we said, why don't we just do 2 conferences? And so we did 2 conferences. That built a relationship with the Bakers. I went back with the Bakers once or twice a year, going and doing conferences in the bush for years. From that, I led trips for Global Awakening to Mozambique, which led to me doing trips for Global Awakening all over, which led to me finally doing work, doing conferences with Randy in 2008 here in the U.S. They only contracted me to do 2. After I did 1, they said, every time we teach on deliverance, we want you to be the guy to do it. So it's like all that I'm doing today all started because back in 2001, I just said yes and took the risk. The risk is always still there. I'm always facing new risks. But it's like I still want everything that God has for me. And I go through, and a lot of times when I say yes to stuff, I feel inadequate. I feel like I'm not ready. But if God has called me into it, I know that He will provision it. He will supply. So what I want to say to you today is this. You can't make decisions based upon fear, feeling inadequate. Oh, I'm not ready. Heaven doesn't listen to those excuses. He pulls you out of the winepress and says, you're going to lead a nation to defeat the Midianites. Oh, but I'm not ready. He will ignore you. That's why you hear nothing whenever you say that. He's ignoring you. He is not listening to you. Some of you should be doing things, and you should be doing things, but you've not taken any step because of fear. Fear what people say, fear of failure, fear I can't do it, fear I can't finish. God will supply. Face the fear. Take the risk. Say yes. Some of you have things in the past that you simply shut down because you said, I'm not willing to do that, and therefore right now you're living in the place of regret. Well, God is a God of restarts. And He's calling you to move forward. I want you to stand. Now I just want to pray for you. Thank you for hanging in here with me. But Lord, I pray that you will just pull out the greatness in everyone here. Father, give them eyes to see them as you see them, not the way that they see themselves, not even to entertain labels that other people would put on them. Father, I know that in this room, in every one of our lives, we can look back and see places of failure. Places of failure, things where we failed, things where we've fallen flat on our face. And sometimes when we have, we'll say, I'll never do that again. We just break that curse of I will never. Because your word says nothing is impossible for you. Nothing is impossible for you. With God, all things are possible. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can. I can. Because God can. In you, through you. Jesus would look at you and he would say, you don't know how amazing you are. You don't know what's inside of you. You don't know all of the way that I created you and made you. You don't know all that's available to you, what's in your hand. You don't know your possibilities. And he just wants to reach down inside of you and just pull it out, smiling at you and letting you see it. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you're going to put limitation on it, you're going to be limiting people like Moses, who was 80. Joshua, 85 when he led those armies. Come on. Say yes. Take a risk. Step out. Lord, just bring us back, let us revisit even some of the things, Lord, in our past where we've said no. So that we can just say, forgive me for that. I'm going to say yes. And we just declare this as a safe house to fail. This is the safety zone because people are going to love you whether you succeed or whether you blow it. In order to bring out, because all those failures just going to expose the things that need to get fixed so God can fix them. Just say yes to what he's been putting in front of you. Take the risk. So Lord, help us to do that. Your grace is sufficient. Your power is sufficient. Thank you, Lord, for your grace. Jay, I'm just going to turn it over to you for whatever's next here.
What we're going to do is releasing the service. If you need prayer for anything whatsoever, I want to challenge you not to leave here without somebody praying for you, specifically in areas of physical healing and even heart issues, heart emotional issues. Friday night we had a healing time with Randy, and there was 223 confirmed conditions that were healed that night. 223 out of a crowd of about 600. And it was because God honored the word that was being released in faith. And so if you have a physical ailment, we've already given you some testimonies. I want to encourage you, our ministry team will be up here. Make sure somebody stands in agreement with you and receive your healing today because we believe it. And I just want to say, make sure also too, don't forget, pray about sow into the ministry of Catherine and Rodney as much as you sow into this house. We honor those who tithe and sow into our house. But I believe that there's a seed that he's going to release through your hand that is going to create more opportunities for this to happen than you can possibly realize, and that God's getting you to step into another place on it. So is somebody dealing with lung cancer or some sort of lung issue concern? I can't, but his lung issue. I just felt a burning inside of my chest. I want to pray for you specifically. Okay. All right. So we love you guys. Again, ministry team, go ahead and come on up. Pastor Chris has got.
Just real quick, we've got a list of all the locations of where the prayer nights will be happening over the next 10 or 11 days, starting at Mike and me and Nolan's house tonight. I'm going to have these over here at the prayer table. If you agreed to be a host of one of these nights, Mia's going to reach out to you individually to just discuss whatever may need to be discussed, so we don't have to take any longer today as far as any meetings. So these will be over there for you guys to pick up, and if you need prayer, just prayer team come up, and God bless you guys.